I got to where I don't say like, I want to be free of addiction. I want to be living an abundant life. That's what I want. That's my goal. And part of that is the path of leaving addiction behind and leaving pornography behind. And part of that's going through some hard times where I'm going to have to step into things where you say it like we're rebuilding trust. Well, that's like the second step to me. The first step is stepping into that to even know if the trust is going to be able to be there. And you've got to just step into it anyway. So that was a big thing for me, is just getting to that point again, that mindset shift of just saying like, okay, I have to step into all of this and just do it. And I'm not going to be in control. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know the other way. And I've been living in it for 30 years and I can't do that anymore.
For our listeners, we have something kind of exciting and different today. We've got a panel four amazing individuals here today to talk with you a little bit about their experiences and the different expertise they have to speak to these issues. So we're going to start with some introductions. Chandler, would you like to go first and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chandler. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Relay Health. Relay is an organization that provides digital programs for people overcoming sexual addiction, including pornography. I personally struggled with pornography for about 12 years. And, ultimately through my own story, realized I couldn't do this alone. I attended group for many years and just started to realize that so many people, I think, deal with this in isolation. It's such a hard thing to talk about, to know how to get support for. And so it was actually a school project at first where I had an opportunity to build an app. And I had just this thought of, what if it were easier to find a community of other people who are trying to overcome pornography and make it less shameful, less scary to do that together. And so ended up working on it. And then 4 years later, it's become our full-time focus and something that I'm deeply passionate about, trying to help people to overcome this together. So that's a little bit about me. It's personal, something I personally struggled with, but now I get to spend a lot of my time working in groups with all these other people.
Awesome. And for any of our listeners, Chandler has been on the podcast before. If you recognize some of his story or feel familiar with Relay, that could be why. So we're excited that he was able to help us put together this panel today. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, happy to. My name is Chris Chandler. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I'm a certified sex addiction therapist. I've been in the field for a little over 20 years. I was trained by Dr. Patrick Carnes, who's arguably the pioneer in the world on sex addiction recovery and really has kind of expanded into all forms of addiction recovery. I actually worked with him for about 6 or 7 years on a multi-million-dollar study called the Fulbright study, looking for the genetic link for sex addiction. So this is my passion. This is what I do, and I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you on this panel today, Chris. Matthew, why don't we jump to you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Matthew. I am 43 years old, and I'm married. I have 5 kids, and sadly, I have struggled with an addiction to porn and masturbation since I was a small boy. I was 5, and I was molested by a young man who lived in our home, and it really sexualized me from a young age, and it's been something that I've struggled with for almost all my life. Um, I'm now 6 months into recovery um, in a real way, I'd say, because it was 6 months ago, almost to the day, that I found Relay. It actually came. It was came via an email from Fight the New Drug, and it was advertised, and I saw it and clicked on it and immediately downloaded the app and began the program that week. Um, and now I'm 102 days free from any type of sexual compulsive behaviors, and it's been huge part of my healing, and just just excited to be here today.
Well, first of all, congratulations on that 102-day journey into your healing. We want to celebrate that with you. And also, I just want to thank you for your courage to be willing to come on this podcast and share your story. Unfortunately, there are many people who've experienced similar things to what you've experienced. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to hear from individuals who have been through these experiences. So thank you so much for being here. And we'll dive into your story a bit more as we kind of move through the panel. But Dane, let's jump over to you for an introduction as well.
Yeah, my name's Dane. I've been struggling with sexual addiction for probably close to 30 years. And I've got 4 kids, married, I mean, house, dog, like all the normal things, but this has been a thing that's just been a part of my life that I've drug along with me, or whether it's pulled me, I guess. It's just been a bondage. But I can say I'm 245 days in sobriety. And I'm sure we'll get into more things later, but it's amazing what you can do when you start walking into health. And so, yeah, that's me.
Well, and congratulations to you as well on that. I'm so excited for our listeners to get to hear from individuals who are actively working on this recovery journey. And thank you also for being willing to come on here and speak transparently about your experiences as well. Dane and Matthew, I would love to start with a question for both of you. Each one of you is in recovery from porn addiction or sex addiction, as you mentioned, Dane. Can you talk about why you decided to take that step and how these addictions were impacting your lives? Dane, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I can start with that. I would say for me, like why I decided to take this step, it doesn't seem like it was so much of like a decision, because that sounds like it was some purposeful thing that I just kind of like thought through and did. What for me, it was more of I was in a cycle of just being pulled by this and controlled by this. And I had tried many times to get out of it, and it was unsuccessful. I think I would get weeks of sobriety, but it was always there. And one of the things I discovered was that there was deeper issues underlying this, and this was just an outlet that I was using to deal with pain and stuff. But for me, it came to a breaking point for my wife discovering some things. And we had gone through that path before, but this last time she basically threw up her hands and was like, I'm giving up, I'm done. And that was a different level for me because she had gotten to where we're just going to have to coexist. And then, but she was also considering like being done completely and leaving. So it became to the point for me, it wasn't deciding to take that step as it was. I was just in desperation of what can I do, and realizing that I needed to step outside of myself, that I have a broken system that I'm trying to use for logic, and it's not working for me. It's not working. I need outside help. I need someone to step in. I need to lean into things that I haven't done before. Things like this, where I'm saying like, I'm going to pull stuff out of the darkness and I'm going to step into light and let this be shown and let other people who have better knowledge than me, because I'm stuck. And so that was kind of, for me, what I started to do. And it wasn't really more of the decision, is more of just, like I said, just stepping into things that I didn't know what the outcome was going to be and just stepping into those.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Matthew, how about for you? What led you to start this journey on your end?
So, I have tried to quit porn and masturbation for so many times during my life. Um, I think it was a constant cycle, just similar to Dane said. I never really had any true long-term success. I don't know that I really knew what I was doing. I don't think I had the tools or the knowledge to find true recovery. I think most of the time I was just white knuckling it as long as I could. And when I felt so shameful for what I was doing. I wanted to stop so badly. And I felt like I was never going to overcome it. And I was looking for any type of help I could find. I listened to this podcast. I listened to others, and the one thing that really stood out to me was that I needed to find connection and I needed to be vulnerable and have the courage to share my story. So when I saw this ad for Relay that I spoke of earlier, I understood and comprehended what that meant and the opportunity, and I jumped in thinking, this is my chance. You know, this will be the opportunity that I have to really share. And it wasn't as scary because there wasn't people that I knew who would be there. You know, it's like a starting point where you could begin and practice being vulnerable for the first time. And that's what drew me to it.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. Chris, I want to jump to you for a minute. Can you speak a bit about how the brain responds to pornography over time and why it makes recovery so challenging? We heard from both Dane and Matthew that, it was a struggle to try quitting previously. And can you just speak a bit to why that is?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys sharing your stories. I mean, that's what this is about, right? It is really understanding that this is rooted in our story and our development. And so I think what I would probably just summarize is maybe just a quick overview of brain development. Would that be okay? I think I can do it in like 1 minute. Time me. Let's see how I do here. I always carry my brain with me. This is a colorful brain. If you're listening, you'll have to go watch the show too, because it's beautiful. So I'll summarize this very succinctly. Dan Siegel at UCLA is probably one of the world's leading researchers on the development of the brain. But three main parts: brainstem, limbic area, and prefrontal cortex. And basically, what you have is a child brain, the teenage brain, and the adult brain. And the average age of onset for pornography currently, I believe, is around 11 years old. It keeps going down in numbers with the increasing access to the internet. And so what you need to know is the brain wires from the bottom up. It wires electrically. And so structurally it's formed, but electrically it's wiring. And so 0 to 10 is primarily the wiring down here. And it's mostly controlling body functions and physical sensations in the body. And so what that means for us personally is that when I feel scared as a child, or I feel unseen, or I feel excited, that's getting hardwired into the nervous system, into my physical body. The pioneer in the world on trauma, Bessel van der Kolk, his book is called The Body Keeps the Score. Literally, the body holds these feelings deeply embedded into our nervous system. And then the limbic system comes online, the teenage brain, around age 11, 12. This is where sexuality is really getting, wired. Emotional connection, amygdala is housed here. So all of a sudden, this is kind of the gas pedal of the brain. If it feels good, it is good, right? It's the pleasure reward center of the brain. And so we're stacking basically sexuality on top of whatever was going on down here. And so you introduce something like pornography into that developmental process, it is like crack cocaine. Like the brain is not designed to experience that level of stimulation, right? We call it a supernormal stimuli. It's overwhelming for the brain. And so when we start firing that limbic area, especially excessively, what we now understand about the electrical wiring, the development of the prefrontal cortex, the adult part of the brain, which comes online around 16, maybe 17 years old and finishes wiring at age 25, is that when we're lighting up this part of the brain, the limbic part, it literally shuts down, it creates a ceiling, and this part of the brain goes dark. So we're basically inhibiting our capacity to develop a prefrontal cortex, our adult brain, which is where oxytocin is really released. It's where bonding and attachment and connection, it's where insight is developed, and empathy and attunement. And so from like 11, 12, 13, wherever we were introduced to this kind of experience, the brain is a habit forming machine, and we just kept lighting that part of the brain up and not allowing ourselves to really develop that capacity for real, authentic human intimacy and relationship. And so we just kind of left to our own devices, right? It's like, this is what has driven us. It's what we know. And we get stuck there. Literally, it's a form of brain damage. We're kind of stuck in like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old ego state. And so it's no wonder why when we come at this to say, oh, okay, I'm going to stop this bad behavior at 20, 30, 40 years old. It's like, I can't, right? I've hardwired this into my anatomy, into my physiology, and just trying to convince myself with this part of my brain, trying to convince this part of the brain to change. Hey, this is destroying your marriage. Hey, you should stop this. It doesn't work. We call it a top-down approach, and it's not enough to transform that part of the brain the way we've wired it.
First of all, thank you. That was a beautiful masterclass in a very condensed amount of time on how the brain works and how pornography specifically impacts the brain. And I will just reiterate for anyone who's listening only, go check this out on YouTube so that you can see the beautiful model of the brain that Chris just used to walk us through that. I'm curious to know, Chris, and then I'd love to hear from the rest of you as well. From your perspective as a licensed therapist, are there common patterns among people who struggle to make progress in overcoming pornography?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the good news is we have a lot of data, like a growing body of data, and Patrick Carnes again is probably one of the leaders in the world on that data. And one of the things he has found in his research, among many, but has always really stuck with me, is that he followed a bunch of people that were trying to get sober from pornography over the course of a year after leaving inpatient treatment. And he found three common factors, three features, three patterns that people seem to have when they were struggling to establish that sobriety. Number one was an understructured program, and it's somewhat relative, but basically what it translated to was that people, are trying to read a book to stop this. They maybe download some accountability software, they talk to a friend, they try a few things here and there, but it's not nearly enough, again, to intervene on the level that we need. We can't just, there's a saying in AA, you can't think your way out of something that you behaved your way into. So we can't just like read a book and try and change our thinking. Like we have to change our whole life. So I need to go to the gym. I mean, it's as basic as like sleep and diet and exercise. It's learning how to recognize what I'm feeling. So when we say understructured program, it means that there's just a common pattern of not knowing what all needs to be changed in my life to be able to make that lasting impact, with sobriety. The second thing that he found was that people that have not written a first step, or maybe they've written one but they haven't shared it, or they wrote it and shared it but it wasn't really as complete and thorough in details it needed to be. And what the first step is, for those that don't know of the 12 steps of AA, was that that we were admitted that we were powerless over, fill in the blank, in this case pornography, and that our lives had become unmanageable. And really what the heart of this is writing out a thorough inventory, a detailed accounting of like, this is how deep the rabbit hole has gone for me, and getting really honest with myself. That's what step one is about, is breaking through the denial and not to continuing to try and fool myself to think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I can stop anytime. Everyone does it. It's not hurting anybody. All those rationalizations kept us stuck for so long, we couldn't change. And so we have to take a thorough accounting, and it really needs to be written. We say if it's not written, it's not real, and detail that. And then we're back to relationship, where there's another saying in 12 steps that if we don't take the first step until we give it away, meaning we have to invite other human beings into that and name it out loud, share it. And the last thing was that it was undisclosed secrets. He found that people that couldn't establish and sustain sobriety were people that were still holding back, still trying to keep things in their own will, trying to do it on their own, not being brutally honest. And so as a result, kind of still stuck in their shame and stuck in their self-will and ego.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of those. From your personal experiences, Matthew, maybe we can start with you. Are there any things you experienced that you can speak to, kind of backing up what Chris has said, but in your own experience, and maybe even building upon that, just noting how this time things have been different, how your approach has been different now that maybe you have some of this information to work with?
Yeah. So, as I have began to share and compare stories with some of my buddies, and I call them brothers, that I've, made on Relay, I've learned that my story is almost identical to so many of theirs. It's like, oh my goodness, I had this, same thought process that would go through my head, and I would think this, and this, and it would lead me to a relapse. And the more that I have, connected and with them, I could see that, I'm not alone. This is affecting all of us in the same way. We have similar boundaries, similar triggers, and that was helpful just to know that, I'm not alone. I'm not abnormal. We're Dana has a saying that, we're not special. We're pretty much, wired very similarly. And um, and to go on to what Chris had to say, I mean, it's huge. Like getting it out. I know that's what I needed. Like I joined Relay because I saw this as that opportunity, that low-hanging fruit to really start sharing. And I joined my first live meeting my first week, and it was scary, but it felt so good to just get that out there and just share. And I just kept coming back as much as I could. And every week, sometimes I'd start going, we'd have multiple, and there got to the point where I'd go to 2 or 3 in a week. Um, and that it was very healing to be able to share. And then there's also the component of the app where we have a team that we're put on, and we can share with that team on a daily basis. We can it's like a message board. We can just go back and forth, and in sharing there was extremely helpful as well. And just getting the support of the team, I found it extremely strengthening to me. Anytime I ever felt an urge, I could reach out to the team. There's a log an urge, throw a red flag feature. And if I did that, it was like that urge went away and I didn't have it anymore. And it was super powerful. And the team was always there just to jump in and support me. And it's been a healing process, and we learned together. Someone's like, oh, I relapsed, and what did you learn from that? How can we all grow from this? And we'd share, and we all help each other. It's super strengthening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We often hear in this space and in this work that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think you're really speaking to that. And it is kind of speaking to the power of, the resource that Relay is, but really the function of Relay, which is to help build that connection and find some recovery through that. So, Dane, I would love to hear from you if you're willing to share some of your experiences that speak to both what Chris said and also how this approach you have now is different than in the past.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it. And I would say too, like if this stuff Chris just said didn't like really resonate with you well, or you kind of glazed over, you need to rewind and watch that again, because that to me that's been key. This kind of the idea of the incomplete step one or undisclosed secrets. Man, undisclosed secrets was where I was living in my cycle, and that's what kept me in it. I say now one of the things I say is we need to have radical honesty with key relationships. I think that's a big deal. I don't think that means you go to your spouse and you just unload everything immediately. I think there's like a structure to it, but I think you need to find someone, probably a therapist is what I would say, to start with and go through that process of unloading all of that stuff in like a structured environment that's helping you. But you need to step into that because you can't do this alone. Like that's the big thing. I was so in my head, so going over the cycle and trying all these things and thinking I could do it. And the crazy thing that I learned about myself too is that I would get traction, and I would take that traction and I would confuse myself by thinking that I'm making progress when I wasn't really, because I would relapse again. And so I would get this false confidence of like, I'm making it, I'm making it, I'm making it. And then what I was doing was just in this cycle of repeating. And I don't know all the science behind it or whatever, but I was just feeding my addiction, even though I was getting kind of success, feeling like I was getting success. It was this weird scenario. And that would just make the highs higher and the lows lower. And I just was cycling and cycling and cycling. But it was all within myself. And the key thing, I think, like Chris said, is these undisclosed secrets are what kept me there. And the thing for me was that I would expose layers. So like I would expose a layer and then feel like I'm doing something. I'm stepping into health. I'm getting better because I exposed this layer a little bit further than I had before. But I never went to the root of it. No, that wasn't even on the table. And that's what kept me in that over and over and over again. And one of the things I like to say, like in Relay with our groups, is like one of the things I think that's powerful that we do is that we're all honest in our struggles and we're bold in our victories. We just don't stop in talking about what we're dealing with. We go through the victories too, and we talk about those. And it's so both sides of the coin, we're constantly talking about those, encouraging each other. And I don't I don't know what community you want to step into, but there is no way I think you can do this in isolation. You have to be in community. So if you look at yourself right now and you're struggling with this stuff and you can see like, I have no community, I have all these secrets, then that's your step one. You know what you need to do. You need to find a community and step into it. And there's tons of things out there. I highly promote Relay, just like Matthew's doing. It's been huge for us. But I mean, whatever you need to do, step into it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think for so many people who have experienced similar things, it's so encouraging to hear kind of what you've been through in this really transparent assessment of your own journeys. And I hope that that will provide a lot of hope to anyone who's maybe in kind of the beginning stages of considering, pursuing recovery on their own as well. Chandler, I'd love to invite you to speak to this if you're interested from your personal story and personal experience as well, but also, as kind of an expert who has a lot of experience with Relay, if you can really speak to why connection makes such a difference in recovery. I mean, you've all spoken to that to a degree, but I'd love to hear that from you as well.
Yeah, I think all these guys did a really great job summarizing why connection is essential. I can remember my first meeting that I ever stepped on or stepped into. It was on Zoom, and just the fear and wondering like who's going to be on the other end, and what the heck is this going to be like? I think a lot of people can relate with that. That's why we spend often years or decades trying to convince ourselves like maybe if we just tweak something, we can figure this out on our own. But yeah, at some point, I reached that breaking realization where I was like, I'm just gonna try a different approach because my data is showing me that the way I'm trying to do this alone is actually not working. And so I'm just gonna try something different. And I want to highlight that it's probably not gonna feel comfortable. It's probably not gonna feel like the step that you're ready for. But I think it is like a gut check of like, is it what I need to do something truly different, to approach it differently? I think that once you realize, okay, I can't do this alone, there is one caution that I would say, which is to not necessarily expect that your support system or your group will actually solve this for you. It's a very fine distinction. It's nuanced. So I want to make sure I'm clear in how I articulate this. It's essential to have community. It's essential to have a good support system. But we can't become overly dependent or codependent. I guess Chris can correct me or jump in. From a clinical standpoint, when we talk about codependence, it's maybe an over reliance on that support system. So I think learning how to actually operate within a support system is something that takes time. It's probably going to be still a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or trying to figure out and get a feel for how to actually practice connection in a healthy way and to experience that. It's like a muscle. I think you have to flex it. But I do see some people sometimes that think like, okay, my group, needs to do this stuff for me, or they didn't respond when I did, throw into the chat, hey, I'm feeling an urge right now to go look at porn. And if no one responded, well, I guess that this community isn't helping me. And I think that there's an importance in taking ownership and realizing that at the end of the day, this is a personal journey. So it's just as much about the personal work as it is about the community. But I think what the beautiful part is that I've seen and I've observed from guys like, Dane and Matthew that are seeing a lot of progress is they're doing the personal work, and that makes the group work and the community 10 times richer, 10 times more valuable.
Chris, do you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is my language. I just so resonate and connect I mean, Johann Hari, the opposite of addiction is connection. I just wanted to piggyback Chandler and say that I think back to what we were talking about in the brain, the reason for that is that we're still stuck in a child ego. We're still stuck in our low brain, right? We have not really developed, we don't know how to have authentic, real, intimate relationship. We don't know how to struggle through that. We've conditioned our brain to reach for a synthetic, false, fake version of connection, and we've completely inhibited our capacity for oxytocin. Oxytocin is the calm, warm, bonding neurotransmitter where there's attachment and attunement, and we're at a deficit for that. And so when we come into recovery, that doesn't just like the scales don't just immediately tip. This is really unlearning how to like go reach for some synthetic fake version of a relationship and learning how to do real relationship. That's scary. It's uncomfortable. it's challenging and it's exhilarating and rewarding. So I just wanted to piggyback on that.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. And also, Chandler, for speaking to what kind of a realistic approach to recovery does look like. Chris, while we're talking about it, I'm curious to know for anyone who thinks, we often hear from people who say, well, I kind of thought, when I would get married, when I got married, I would just quit and this would stop. Or when I had kids, it would just, this would stop. And this is kind of a common idea that people have is like, well, when I decide I want to, I can just stop. And you've spoken about the way the brain works and why that's difficult, but can you also give kind of what does a realistic path to recovery look like for many people, for anyone who has found themselves in that cycle? What does it actually look like? What is the amount of time that is realistic for many people to consider actually moving toward recovery?
I'm scared to answer that honestly because we're in an immediate gratification world and we want immediate results, right? I signed up for Relay. I did this thing. I took this step, and everything's supposed to be better, right? I watched this podcast. I did this thing. And the truth is, it's just not how a relationship works. It's not how development works. It's not how intimacy works. And so, unfortunately, it's really not about time. I will say that. It's not about duration. It's everything about repetition, right? The brain changes with repetition. So it's how many reps are you putting into real connection, real sobriety. And so, Matthew, when you were talking earlier, like, man, I experienced this and then I wanted more. It's like, yeah, like 2 meetings, 3 meetings, like that is putting in really good reps. That's building a more robust, structured program of recovery, like Carnes was talking about. That's giving more opportunities for disclosure of my secrets, right? To practice learning how to be being rigorous, honest in relationship. Marriage does not fix everything. In fact, most often it actually makes it worse because one, we're chasing a fantasy of what marriage is actually like. We're not actually chasing, we have no idea what marriage is really like, right? It's like a dog chasing a fire truck. Like we have no idea what to do with it when we get it. And the reality is we're in that committed romantic relationship. It actually exposes more deeply the little boy, little girl that is terrified. Like, oh, this is real. This is scary. This isn't just like some Disney movie. Like I got to like show up with my whole heart. I don't know how to do that. And so I can go back to a screen and that's a lot safer and it's familiar. And so I think marriage oftentimes is just gas on a fire. And so I don't know if you're going to want to post this, but Patrick Carnes found that it takes 3 to 5 years of rewiring the brain for it to truly experience long-term transformation. Now, like these guys are saying, that 3 to 5 years only happens with, one day, 7 days, 7 months, 7 years. So like it's an incremental process and it's about building repetition. And so I don't usually lead with that data because then I never see people again.
Yeah, and I understand your hesitation with it. And also I would say I think there's a lot of value in that for anyone who has been on this journey, who's put in a lot of time and maybe does relapse 100 days in or does relapse 200 days in, to know that this is a process that does take time. And I think there's something helpful for many people about having a realistic sense of the fact that this isn't something that can shift overnight, and that it does also take active work, which I want to talk about a little bit with you, Dane and Matthew. Maybe Dane, we can start with you. Can you speak to what daily habits or mindset shifts have been the most important for you in your recovery journey?
For me, it was dealing with being uncomfortable. I think part of my acting out and my pattern was I got to where there was no thinking involved. It was more of react. I mean, I'm trying to self-diagnose here, which is not always good, but like I was in painful situations. I knew this was the path, and it was almost instinctive to go back to this to escape that, to gain some control, because I've got control in that scenario, right? And so that was my pattern. So for me, it was like changing my mind to be able to get to where I'm like, okay, this is painful or scary or risky or uncomfortable, but that's okay. I'm going to have to step into this and do it anyway. And I think that's part of kind of undisclosed secrets too, because like if you can't get to that point where you're like, this is going to be scary, painful, unknown, uncomfortable, like put whatever you want around that, that's that feeling for you. And then say, I'm going to step into it anyway. If you can't see yourself doing that, then you're going to stay stuck. at least for me, that was my experience. And so I had to get to a point where I just said, okay, I can't let that control me anymore. That has to be one of the key things for me, is that I'm going to step into pain. I'm going to walk through pain. I'm going to feel pain. Because another thing I've learned too is that I think a lot of us think this is like, if I could just get healthy, if I could just get past this addiction, the world's going to be like rainbows and sunshine or something. But the world doesn't stop being the world because you're not addicted anymore. I have things happening now that are kind of difficult or painful in life, but they're not going to just stop. So I have to have that shift to where I'm like willing to step into those things. So that's been a big key thing for me. I think daily habits is a lot of it's been like, again, finding that community is going to bring some daily habits in if you really step into it. Like a lot of that's happened from that, like meetings, going to counseling, journaling, doing things like that. And then you're going to be encouraged through those if you are doing that with people. Like if you're doing that in isolation, again, you're not, those daily things are, you're going to tap out eventually and stop doing them. But because again, the things are going to happen. But if you're doing it with a community, you keep doing those things. Not like, I think like Chandler said, not that you're relying on them for that, but they're helping, encouraging you to keep going. So I think those are a couple big things for me that have made a difference.
Thank you so much. Matthew, how about for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I would have to agree with what Dane said for starters. There's no doubt that like stepping into being uncomfortable was huge. Like that's what got me into Relay, because I knew that it was going to give me that opportunity to experience that. But then, right off the bat, when you join Relay, they ask you to set up your, you create abstinence goals and you define what those are for you. You set boundaries, that they're going to protect you so you can maintain those abstinence goals. And then you set self-care that's going to help strengthen you, through this journey and give you something more positive to focus on, is how I look at it. As I went along my journey, I saw some immediate success. Like I went 45 days right off the bat, and I was like, dang, this is sweet. Like I'm making progress. But then I had a relapse, and I was like, oh dang. But what I learned was like you need to dial those boundaries up a notch to adjust for every situation. Like, oh, I didn't consider this, and I need to adjust here and adapt. And as I have done that, I also realized that I wasn't taking my boundaries like seriously enough. Like if I'm casual with them, I'm going to be casual in my abstinence goal too. So couldn't do that. I had to go all in. And when I committed to being 100% on my boundaries, it made a huge difference. Like I haven't had a relapse since. And it was just a mindset shift, right? And that made a big difference for me. And second to that was just a desire to engage. Like I learned that you could be on these teams and you could all just sit around waiting for somebody to throw a flag, and you're like, oh, hey, do you need help? Can I help you? And it just wasn't engaging enough. If everyone just you sit around and didn't do anything. So I made a goal that I needed to every morning share something and be vulnerable for my previous day, like some reflection or, just where am I at? And as I did that, it really connected me more with the team, and we felt more like brothers. And it was huge. I could see, I'm actually on two teams, and I could see both of my teams like increase in the amount of sharing that was happening as a result of my desire to do that same thing. And it's been incredible to see, and we've really bonded so well, and it's helped. I mean, it's one thing if you are on a team with people that you don't really know. It's another when you really feel like you know and care about those people, and that increases that connection. That obviously is as we spoke to earlier, is as the opposite of addiction. So that was really helpful for me as I've gone along. there's one last feature I just wanted to speak to that I feel has been really helpful for me, and that's that log and urge feature where you throw the flag. So I have done that and committed myself to doing it every time. And what I have found was that every time I did it, it helped me. It stepped me through this process. There was always like a point in which you could reflect and do some sort of exercise that helped you out. And that helped me a lot. It really gave me, it allowed my mind to step outside of my current situation and think from a better perspective. And it allowed me to like, okay, you're better than this. And as that other person, I could give myself encouragement as part of this process that was designed to help you work through this urge. And like I said, I've never had a relapse when I actually did that. So I made a commitment that I would never have an urge that I wasn't going to log and throw a flag. And it's been huge. And I've seen it progress. And eventually those urges have been few and far between. And they've gotten to the point where they're just not happening like they were before.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Matthew. Chandler or Chris, do either of you have anything you'd like to add to this question about mindset shifts or daily habits?
Go
I
for
was
it,
just
Jim.
going to say, I mean, Chris, you talked about this idea of reps, and I've spent a lot of time talking with Chris about the brain stuff, and he's taught me a lot more recently as we've talked about how to actually make this process easier. And one of the takeaways just for me as a normal person was like, it's just putting in the work each day. And so I think just that one mindset shift of like, this is just a process of me putting in the work. If that's all I focus on, the healing will follow. Pornography will naturally fade away as I focus on helping my brain get the reps through the right type of work. So that I think that's been helpful for me along my journey, and I've seen that help others.
Yeah, I could say two things. This is Dane to the mindset shift, like two more things. One would be just the idea that like Matthew had said, I'll say like we're not special, but the power in that to me is that if someone's listening to this or hearing us and thinking like, whoa, he's so many days sober, I'll never make to that. Like there's nothing special about me that these other people can't do. So that's super encouraging to me that as I've listened to people and heard their stories, there's so many commonalities between them. And that's a big thing that I think should be an encouragement. And that's a mindset shift for me because I had to realize that I can do this. So it's believing that it can be possible was a big thing. And with that, another thing for me was going through an exercise that I kind of did on my own of just saying like, what would I look like healthy? Like if I was healthy, what would that look like? And exploring that and writing it down so that I have some kind of target in my mind. Because I think a lot of us, I mean, I can speak for me, from my personal experience, I was so deep in this that I hadn't even pictured what I would look like healthy because it consumed me so much. And I was so busy trying to manage it in whatever way I can that I never thought about what that looked like. So just having those mindset shifts of like, if I was healthy, this is what it would be, and that it is possible for me are like huge things to start you on that journey because it's like we've said, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy, but it's definitely doable. And you've got to figure out ways to get you to shift your mindset to like take that in and start letting that guide you.
If I could piggyback on those, I'd love to. From what I heard you say, Matthew, is that really kind of shifting into what I would call a learning, growing, changing model, right? We're not outcome driven, right? We're really growth driven. We're learning as we go. And what I heard you say was that, it's like you have a slip or a relapse, God forbid. And yet if it happens, it's not like whoopsie daisies and now we're back at zero. It's like, no, I didn't lose all this, growth that I've had. I use that to really understand, okay, what happened, right? Relapse is a further evidence of how deep the wound goes. I just showed you the brain. It's just an evidence that there's still deeper parts of me that are still, that little boy, that little girl is still needing the connection. And so it's like, okay, like I want to unpack this and learn from it and grow from it. And yes, I'm going to increase the structure in my program and I'm going to intervene more effectively. But if the only thing we're tracking, and this kind of goes to what you were saying, Chandler, is the scoreboard, on the game, like that's really discouraging, right? Especially if you're in the SEC. I'm a college football guy. So, it's like defensive strategy, right? The end score is 7-3. You're like, dude, what? But there's so many data points that are playing into that are so much more important, in my opinion. Now, if we're not scoring points, then that's a problem too, right? So the scoreboard is important, but it's one data point among countless data points. So I think what I hear you guys describing is like recognizing what are the data points, what are the ways what are the levers that are really impacting change, moving forward. And the last thing I would just add, because I'm so deeply committed to the relational connection piece of this, is that we get so focused. The model for me is a three-legged stool of behavior, core, relational. And I'm not going to go in depth on it, but I just want to say that we get so focused on the behavioral leg of the stool, changing behaviors, that we forget that there's a deeper core. I've said often that you do not have a porn problem, you have a pain problem. And so we have to stop the porn use to get to the pain. But that is what we're after. We're about healing wounds, not about managing behaviors. When we get to do that, then we get all the way upstream to relational intimacy as we were designed to experience it. And that most of us have not really truly experienced what real intimacy feels like, looks like. And so that's exciting, right? That's the opposite of addiction, right? Is deep connection.
That was a really wonderful segue, because I do want to ask you, maybe Matthew, let's start with you. How did you start rebuilding trust in your relationships throughout this process of recovery?
This is a tough one because, for me, I kind of came back on this journey by myself and jumped in. I had disclosed previously to my wife 20 years ago that I had a problem with this, and we worked through it for about a year, but I really never had a lot of success. And to be honest, I wasn't able to, you know, to be truthful with her for those years and tell her that, look, the problem didn't go away. And I was so stuck in the shame cycle that I couldn't bring myself to share that. And it was so hard because I wanted to, but I didn't want to hurt her because I didn't know how to get over it. I didn't know how to be free. I thought it's just going to hurt her every time I relapse. And that to me was so hard. And I finally got the courage, to come to her. And once I started seeing like healing is possible, like, okay. And that gave me the courage to go to her and do a full disclosure. And it was so scary to do that because I mean, I'd been lying to her for 19 years, and that was really hard on her to be able to take that. And it took a while for her to wrap her head around what just got thrown at her. I mean, I'd been dealing with this for all those years and working through it and now getting to a better spot. And now she's like just finding out about it. And it was really, really hard. And it was a whole new journey beginning that day as we're working through this. And it hasn't been easy, but the more we've talked and worked through it, it's our relationship has grown to a level that I honestly never thought was possible. It has been so beautiful because I never experienced that level of connection with my wife that I have had since that day. And I know it gave me so much hope for the future and so much excitement to see like, wow, this is where our relationship could really go. And even before I disclosed this to her, she even admitted to me, she's like, something's changing in you. Like, what is different about you? And it wasn't until I disclosed that she just like, oh, that makes so much sense, and she could see, and honestly, it gave her hope too, because she was frustrated with me for years of, obviously we didn't have the best connection because of, this problem that was in my life that wasn't allowing me to create this higher level of connection. I had my brain was on porn, and I wasn't my true self. And with her seeing that that old me wasn't really me, Matthew was somebody else, and it's so much better. And she got new hope for our relationship, just as I had new hope, and that has just fueled a fire of love that we didn't know was possible. And so I'm just so grateful for this whole experience because of that, and I'm hopeful for the future. And that's just exciting. So I just want to share that with everyone, that it's hard. You got to lean in, but there is so much good on the other side of being vulnerable and truthful. And yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Matthew. I think it is something that is so scary for so many people to consider approaching a partner to discuss this. And to hear that in your experience, you're now experiencing a deeper level of connection, I do think is so encouraging for so many people. Dane, if we could jump to you, if you're willing to share how you've gone about rebuilding trust or starting to rebuild trust in your relationships through this process.
Yeah, I would echo what Matthew said. Like all of that is just so right on. But I want to say something else to that as well. Like, I went through kind of a similar process, and my wife and I are closer than I've ever realized possible. And a lot of credit goes to her for grace. I mean, there's a lot there because I think one thing he didn't mention, which I'm sure is true for his situation, is like now in the position I'm in, looking back, I didn't know if we were going to stay together. So I think some people see these stories like this and they look at it and they think, oh, you and your wife are together. You're on the other side. That's amazing. We may not get there. Well, you have to think back when Matthew was at this spot, I'm sure, and when I was at this spot, there was no guarantee that I was going to be here. She had every right to leave and go 100%. And it's from her grace that she's still like extending to me, which is not taken for granted for sure. And so, but we've built a lot over these past 245 days for us that hasn't been built for before. And a lot of that stems from me, again, that undisclosed secrets, just being like, I have to face that this is painful. I have to face that my paths are going down this path of destruction and hiding that could end in whatever. I don't know, probably divorce or something. I don't, the path, it was dark. Or I can take this other path and disclose these things and be honest with my wife, which you should be anyway. Come on, be honest with my wife and expose this stuff and start moving towards healing. And then she gets to choose what she's going to do with that. I can't choose for her. What I can decide is to know that it's unknown and it's scary and it's difficult, but it's where truth is. It's where an abundant life is for me. Because this was not, because like Chris has said, like you don't have this addiction problem, you have a pain problem, or however deep it goes. And I know mine goes deep, and I realized that as I started unraveling layers. But I I got to where I don't say like I want to be free of addiction. I want to be living an abundant life. That's what I want. That's my goal. And part of that is the path of leaving addiction behind and leaving pornography behind. And part of that's going through some hard times where I'm going to have to step into things where you say it like we're rebuilding trust. Well, that's like the second step to me. The first step is stepping into that to even know if the trust is going to be able to be there. And I have to step into that first. And so I think a lot of times people skip that when they hear these stories because they think like, how do I rebuild trust? Well, you got to step back and realize that you're not going to have it at first, and you've got to just step into it anyway. So that was a big thing for me, is just getting to that point again, that mindset shift of just saying like, okay, I have to step into all of this and just do it. And I'm not going to be in control. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know the other way. And I've been living in it for 30 years and I can't do that anymore. So that's kind of how it's been for me. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think similarly to, as Chris mentioned, this is an addiction that forms over many years. It's not going to go away overnight. If the breakdown of trust also happens over many years, it's not going to be rebuilt overnight either. And so I think it's important to hear from both of you and hear that even though you are in a space now that is so encouraging, there is a process to get to that space and to continue from the place that you're in now, in rebuilding that trust as well. So thank you both for sharing that. Chandler or Chris, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
I would just say that to your point, Dane, courage never feels courageous in the moment, right? It just feels terrifying. So that's what I connect with in that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll share, because I've gotten a little bit of a behind the scenes view for both of these guys, for Dane and Matthew and their journeys. I can share that it hasn't been linear from my perspective. Like there's still days, that it seems like, there's progress, but then there's still pain. And so that rebuilding process in the relationship is A, gonna look different for every single couple out there, or every single relationship, but B, it's not necessarily going to just be up and to the right, a linear graph. And like Dane emphasized, like we're dealing with two people here, and the person that was hurt, betrayed, wounded, like they need to figure out their own healing path too, and that's going to look, different and have a different timeline for every person. And so I can see what I've noticed from these guys and others, like learning emotional skills, like how to not get defensive when that pain is hard for them, but you're feeling like you're doing way better now because you are being a trustworthy person, and you're starting to do those things, but they're still looking at you like that person that you were, that you've already started to change away from. And the ability to not react, to not, get sucked back into that place, I think is very difficult. I've experienced that. I still experience that with my wife, where like we've evolved and grown in our healing journey around my recovery story together, but there's still these moments where like I'm having to practice these basic like emotional skills of being able to listen, to attune to her needs, and to realize that it's okay for her to feel lack of trust or pain, as a result of the history. In this current moment, it doesn't mean that's how she's going to feel tomorrow. Like I have to be able to show up for her in the moment, and these are skills again that most of us didn't learn growing up, that benefit us not just in a romantic relationship, but in all aspects of our life.
I might piggyback on that. I love that's so powerful. And as we're talking about our partners, our spouses, betrayed partners are, I think, some of the most courageous and resilient people in the world. I mean, to go through this kind of trauma is just agonizing because we entered into a committed relationship. They entered into a committed relationship with us, signing up for Prince Charming, and they got, frog or whatever. So it doesn't even do it justice. I'm sorry, but it's just brutal. And so it's been said that a lot of times we come into recovery, that pain pushes us into recovery, but that hope and love pull us forward in recovery. And so I think the sooner we can have those experiences of experiencing love and grace from our wife, it's like, wow, that's what love feels like. And again, we don't get that until we're courageous enough and willing to just be honest, and we risk losing it all. That is terrifying. And yet you guys took that step, and you experienced a little glimpse of that. You experienced it in Relay. You've continued to experience it. It's like, man, as I listen to your stories, I just can't stop smiling. 'Cause I'm like, man, that's it, right? This again, like this is so much bigger than just not doing bad behavior. So I'm excited for you guys.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Chris, maybe actually we could start with you. I want to talk a little bit about, for all of you who have been in recovery, how your view of yourself has evolved through this recovery process. But Chris, I want to start with you, just noting for someone who maybe isn't in a relationship right now, but is still looking to pursue recovery, who maybe doesn't have that hope or that love or that relationship to pull them forward in some of the ways that we've kind of addressed. What advice would you give to them in starting with themselves and in starting with that relationship with themselves as they pursue recovery?
I just want to say like that I'm so thankful in some ways for as much damage as the internet has done. It is also such a gift that, like, for instance, you guys are doing podcasts like this, and you're spreading this message, and it's giving clarity and perspective, I think, to younger people, so that they don't have to go through. I don't know how old Matthew and Dana are, and I'm not going to try and guess because I don't want to, damage our relationship. But for a lot of us, I'm in my 40s. It's like we didn't have anyone helping us understand the impacts of this and the long-term damage of this. And so to be able to see that earlier on, and to know like, okay, this is what's coming if I keep going down this road. Now, the tragic reality is that sometimes, as my supervisor used to say, sometimes people just have to swim with the sharks and get more bloody before they are willing to get in the boat. The truth is that sometimes we have to go through a lot of pain ourselves, in order to be willing to finally just surrender and say, okay, like I can't do this on my own anymore. I need help. But, God willing, I'm deeply hoping that there's this. I'm seeing men and women come in younger and younger saying, hey, I already see the data points showing up and I don't want to go down this path and I need help. And that is so exciting because again, you're intervening when the brain is still young and developing. And so you're not pouring gas on that fire for a couple more decades before you finally realize, scorched earth, your life is in ruins and you got to like, now you have no choice but to get help. So I would just say the sooner the better. And just, my hope would be that just go all in, like whatever it takes. Like, I don't think you can go too overboard on this, ask for help, seek out resources. Again, I'm thankful for resources like this. I'm thankful to be a part of it. It's an honor. One other thing that came up as you guys were sharing that we just haven't touched on is it's just the power of gratitude. I heard that from you guys, Matthew and Dana, as you were talking about just the gift of grace from your wives. And that is such a powerful driving force as well for changes. Like, man, I have so much to be grateful for today. And again, the core of that is really rooted in love, which again is kind of our big why of like why we want to heal and change.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Dane, maybe we can start with you. How has your view of yourself evolved through your recovery process?
Oh man, it has a lot. So I would I would look at myself and I used to think that I was pretty introverted. I still think like I have like those tendencies a little bit, but it was masked by this idea that I was trying to like social events became so taxing on me because I was trying to manage my persona in so many different people. And I'm trying to manage this addiction and I'm trying to show that we're the perfect family and I'm internally just having these battles. I think that's the big thing. My perception of myself has changed to be more free and relaxed because I'm not handling this internal battles all the time. I'm not constantly on go of trying to be defensive of everything about me. And so that's been a big change. So just being honest, being vulnerable, being real, those are things that I'm stepping into and it's different for me to do actively. And one of the big things that I've been trying to do and want to do is I think back to where I am now and where I was. There was a lot of times like having lived in that spot of addiction, I know how a lot of these people think. I mean, I'm not an expert in recovery, but I've definitely got a PhD in doing this stuff for 30 years, right? So I just know instinctively how these guys feel. And so what I've been trying to be is like, I want to speak that voice that I needed to hear that wasn't being said to me when those opportunities arise. So that's kind of like a mantra for me now is like when I'm in situations or in community, whether it's relay, whether it's wherever it is, I'm going to say those things that I may not normally say in the past or not in like my personality type, but I'm going to say them because I can recognize something or someone needs to hear something and I'm going to speak it. So those are big things that have been changing for me and just, yeah, connection with my wife and just with my kids. There's a lot of times where man, and this has been a driving motivator for me is like staying away from just getting back into that stuff is like I've missed so much life with my kids and my wife because of this addiction. It has stolen so much from me that I cannot get back. I cannot get that back. It's gone. And so if you want something to drive you away from this stuff, get that in perspective. Go through how much life you've lost that is taken away. That I've missed. And so those things have kind of shaped how I perceive myself and view myself and how I'm going to react to things and do things and have been moving forward.
Thank you for sharing that. Matthew, how about for you?
Yeah, so I love what Dane said. It's so true. I I just have this whole journey has made it so I have this hope now that I didn't have before, and I want others to feel that same hope that I didn't have for so long. And it's changed the way I interact, with the team, like on relay and everyone that is part of my journey. I'm not so much there engaging every day for myself anymore. It's more for them and for everyone and just everyone's benefit. And I enjoy, it's just trying to help others. And that's what's been my primary motivator in being willing to come on this podcast right now, because this is hard. This is difficult to agree to do this. And, my first podcast and, a lot of people out there, like, I'm thinking to myself, oh, they know me, they're probably not watching this podcast maybe, but if they are, you know, um, it's that's scary. But my desire to help others and the thought that somebody could benefit from this is worth it to lean in. And I want to help my team, whatever I can do to encourage them and share the tools that have been successful for me and what has allowed me to find this along the way. And what I've seen is that I'm changing. You know, my wife saw the changes. She saw the changes in me early on, but the shame that I felt. So that's the biggest difference for me. Like I had been plagued by this shame for so long. And as I worked on sharing and coming out, and it's like the shame has melted away. And I just feel so much better about myself that I don't have to loathe that part of me that I hated for so long. And I'm finally to the point where I can be free of that shame. And that is just amazing. And that has been the primary thing that has helped me along this process to free myself of that shame. And it has allowed me to heal. It's just helped me so much. And I feel more confident in myself, more like I just have more worth that I didn't have before. So I just wanted to convey that.
And I just want to highlight that what you just did was was a step through shame, right, into vulnerability. And that, so like for those that are watching the podcast, like right now, real time, like this is how the shame melts away, right? It doesn't just happen. Like you are taking a bold, courageous step to let yourself be more fully seen and known to the world. And you receive love, right? I feel nothing but like deep admiration and love for you. And I know that people listening feel the same. And so that is just such a powerful experience. You know, I had a mentor early on say he wakes up every morning and asks, how can I do violence to evil today? And I know it's kind of a weird, twisted way to think about, but what you just did was violence to evil, violence to that shame that has kept you stuck for so long and destroyed so much of your life. It's like, no, I'm not letting that continue to have a foothold and stepping through that. So I just wanted to say, way to go, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I think just to reinforce, I mean, the fact that you're all on this podcast right now, speaking to these experiences is a very real example of you actively working on everything you've shared so far, on disclosing this information, on not hiding behind these secrets, on being vulnerable and being transparent and doing the work and taking these steps. And I do just want to reinforce that I know for many people listening, especially those who can relate to the experiences that you've both had, and those who are maybe haven't begun a recovery journey yet, but want to. Hearing your stories will only help. And so I want to thank you for your courage and willingness to show up in this way, and to know that you're facing the thing that is scary once again, as you've mentioned, was kind of a beginning stage of this for both of you. So Chandler, while we're here, do you have any success stories from Relay that you'd like to share? And then, because Relay is a group model, maybe the rest of you also have success stories you'd like to share as well, that our listeners might find some encouragement in.
I mean, I still remember both Dane and Matthew's like very first meeting they attended. Like when I met them, like these guys are like some of the stories that I genuinely think about, like when I'm going to sleep at night, and I feel like I learned from them. And yeah, there's a couple other stories of people that come to mind. One guy who we're friends with is in one of our groups together. He shared this last week at a meeting, just this feeling, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was describing in the deepest point of his addiction, feeling almost dead, feeling like he wasn't really living, and describing the shift and feeling like he is truly living now, that he didn't really ever know himself before this. And for the first time, he's actually getting to know the real him. And I just thought that was so powerful to hear from him. He's got quite a bit of sobriety as well. But for me, that's not as cool as hearing that shift in how miserable he felt for so many years, and feeling like he's truly living now. Whether you're in a relationship or not, whatever your career, your job, your life looks like, just that shift internally, I think, is the most beautiful thing that I've seen in people's stories. There was a female user, and I just want to mention, like, this isn't just a problem for men. Like, we do have plenty of women that come through our community. And I've had the chance to interact with a few of them, and one of them told me like I felt like literally I was the only woman who struggled with this, and the shame,
Yeah.
it feels like, for the women especially, is even deeper or just magnified. And she shared just the feeling of being able to surround herself with community. She shared like before, joining community and getting help, like she wasn't able to get past 1 or 2 weeks without pornography, and joining Relay, she was able to make it a few months. Once she decided like I'm going to surround myself with these people. But again, just the beauty in her realizing like for so long she felt like there was nobody, and then having that shift and realizing you're not alone. I think have been some really cool stories.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any success stories you've experienced along your journeys that you'd like to share?
This is Dane. I can speak to one, or just kind of an idea. It's more not a success story for an individual person, but one of the things that we'll do, like we have like Zoom or like video meetings we do through Relay with our groups. And one of the things we'll say is, or I say, I won't put this on everyone else, is that like my heroes are the ones that just came in after they've relapsed and they're back in a meeting. And I'm just because I can feel where they are. Because I mean, I'm 200 something days out of this, but I know in a heartbeat what it feels like to be there. And so just the power and the courage to step in to come to that meeting, a video meeting the next day. But so I guess the success story around that would be a number of these guys kept doing that. And so some of those guys are further in recovery now, and that's not their story anymore. So the success story to me is that even though they had relapses that were happening and they were already a part of the community that we have and they were still cycling, they didn't just throw their hands up and just give up. They said, I'm going to lean in harder. I'm going to come into those groups. And so, what is my job to do there? Again, like I'm going to be that person that I needed. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to say how great it is that they're there. I'm going to emphasize that because I want them to come back. I want them to be a part of it. And we've got so much in the community. There's people that has been their story, and now they're doing amazing. And so I just want that to be an encouragement that it doesn't matter where you're at or what you've done before, even to the hours before. I mean, you just need to step into those things. So it's cool to have those things happening within our community.
I will just add from my experience. I mean, I've been doing the work for over 20 years. I primarily work from a group therapy model. So I do very little individual therapy these days. And I do a lot of groups. So I have 11 groups, 10 men's recovery groups and one women's group. And so about 110, 120 people a week. And I just, for over 20 years, I mean, I tell people a lot, like if I didn't experience what Matthew and Dane are describing, on a weekly basis, I kind of joke, like I'd go drive a bread truck because, this takes everything out of me. Like it just requires all of me to show up. And if it was just that and none of what you're experiencing here today on the podcast, then it would be exhausting. But this is the power and the beauty of transformation, of recovery, of healing, of change, of connection, of love. And the twice a year I get pull the groups together for an in-person 3-day intensive. And the last one we're having one next week actually, and I'm really excited about that. But the last one we did was in San Diego, and there was a gentleman there that was all just tatted up and just rock star kind of guy, tough guy, and he's been in recovery for maybe 6 months to 6 months, and he the last day he's overwhelmed in tears, and he just said, like, I didn't know that love was a real thing. I thought it was something that Disney sold to the world and everyone kind of like pretended like it was a thing. But he's I'm just like, I can't not get emotional telling these stories, but it's like I feel it, like I know what this is supposed to be like, right? It's like, dude, that is it. That's what we're chasing after. So
Thank you all. Something so interesting is typically by the end of a podcast episode, I have to ask, where is the hope? What hope can you give to people? And something I love so much about this panel that's been such an honor to get to hear from each of you and speak with you, is that I've just felt hope the entire time and encouragement the entire time. And I'm sure our listeners have as well. But I do want to give each of you a moment if there's anything else you haven't shared that you would like to share or you would like to touch on before we end this panel today. I would love to give you a moment to do that. So, Chandler, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Again, I think anyone listening to this, like that finds themselves in this spot of pain or struggle, if you can relate to whatever's been shared today, even in a small way, like I want you to know that you are seen. Like even if we're not talking to you one-on-one right now, like I wish I could. I wish that we could because I know how much it sucks to be alone in the dark for so long. And hopefully, some of what we said today might encourage you that um, there is the possibility of being able to step into the light, and it probably will be uncomfortable. You probably will have to surrender control. Like has been said, I think it's not supposed to feel easy. But I think again, if we look at this like an iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is the pornography problem. If we're still here struggling, if you're listening to this and like, man, I've tried everything, um, all it means is that there's some part of that iceberg underneath the surface that we haven't figured out, some part of your story that we need to go discover, some pain that we need to get to the root of. And that's just one analogy that's helped me realize like, um, even if I do feel like I've been working hard, if I have been putting myself out there, like have patience, realize that it is a process of healing more than it is about trying to win this battle of sobriety and quitting. And so that's my maybe final piece of advice is to try to shift away from thinking about this as a quitting journey and look at this really as a decision to embark on a deeper healing journey.
Thank you so much. Matthew, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah. I would just say, if you're struggling with this, don't give up. There's hope. I was lost. I was hopeless. I thought there was no way out, but I have I have begun to feel true healing. And these shifts that Chandler talked about, they're real. I've experienced these shifts, and I know I'm not at 3 or 5 years, but I feel like a different man. And I am so grateful for this. And I just know that you can experience the same thing too. And I just hope that you would not give up and step into the uncomfortable, and you can find similar healing that we've been able to find.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Dane, how about for you?
Yeah, I would echo kind of what Chandler was saying. I mean, something that resonated with me through that was like the healing journey idea, like it's a healing journey. One of the things I was stuck in when I was doing cycles was this idea that even if I can get to sobriety, am I going to have to be having this battle every day for the rest of my life? So I had this picture that sobriety was just fighting harder every day, and it was a constant battle, and that felt almost a different level of exhausting, right? So what I would want to say to people is that in that broken state, you're trying to picture something healthy, and you can't. You can't do it. At least I couldn't. I couldn't do it. And so my perception was wrong. And so on the other side, I would speak back to you and say, it's completely different than what you think. Yes, is it still something you have to handle? Yes. Is it still, are there still struggles? Yes. Is the world still spinning around and throwing things at you? Yes. Like all these things are still happening, but the way you perceive them, it's like you're looking through a different window. And so the struggle isn't what you think it is on this side. And that's the most I can explain it, because I think there's so many things in life where you can like hear them, but until you experience them, you don't know what it is. So I'm hoping that's enough motivation to push people to like, I got to experience this because I don't know. Because for me, for the longest time, again, that struggle was like, if sobriety is just this cycle doing it harder, then I'm in trouble because I don't have the strength to do it now. And I just want to, that's a myth. It's not real. So I would just, that's what would want people to hear, is just that there is that healing journey really is truly a healing journey. And I'll emphasize the healing part of that in that journey that's happening. It gets good. It's good. And so just to step into that.
That's so well said. Thank you. And Chris, any final words from you?
I don't think words are needed, honestly. I think what you feel from Matthew and Dane, this is, I mean, to your point, Dane, I don't hear struggle in your voice. I mean, I hear a fight, I hear courage, I hear, taking some courageous, incredible steps. But I mean, what you feel, you as the listeners feel with Matthew and Dane, like that, this is it. So I think that's what we're after. That's what the experience is. I think that sells itself, right? I mean, so nobody wants to stay in pain. We all want to experience more peace and love. And it's like, okay, well, here's a path. So
And we're in it together. That's the biggest thing I come back to is like, we weren't designed to go through these hard things alone. We can walk the path together.
Thank you all. Chandler, for anyone who is interested in checking out Relay, can you let our listeners know where to go, what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that wants to join Relay, like if you come into the community, number one, you don't have to join the live meetings. You can just start with the Matthew called it like discussion board, like it's a group chat. Like you don't have to show your face if you're not ready. If you do join the meetings, like the three of us are actually on these meetings, me, Matthew, Dane, quite frequently. You probably actually will meet us. And so I just want to say, like, we'd love to meet you and come be a part of it. You can go to our website, which is www.joinrelay.app. And especially for right now, as we're nearing the end of the year and we start thinking about goals and really trying to do things differently, I think there's no better time to jump into communities. So when you sign up, we'll help match you with a team and a group that is a good fit for you, with other people who have a similar goal, that are in a similar spot. And then when you come in to the program, there's content that will help you be able to work on how do you actually heal the brain, how do you understand how deep this goes and actually understand the pieces that have been missing. But I think we've covered a lot of the biggest pieces in joining Relay. It's just starting to walk the path together. So you'll get a lot of tools and guidance, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for making time to join me today. It was such an honor for me to get to hear from each of you and have this conversation. And I know there's so much value in everything that everyone just said. And I'm so excited for our listeners to be able to hear that. But Matthew and Dane, I specifically want to commend you for taking this step in your journey and in sharing your stories in such a bold way. If you're listening, you can't see the physical celebrations that Chris and Chandler just had. But we are all, I hope you take a moment to just be so proud of yourselves and really acknowledge what this step is. And I know this will help so many others. So thank you for your willingness to do this. I can't wait for our listeners to hear this conversation.
It's the best time of year to shop at the Fight the New Drug online store during our annual No Porn November sale, happening all month long. Get up to 50% off our conversation starting gear, including new items released just this month. It's the perfect time to stock up on your favorite fighter gear. Plus, when you shop, 100% of the proceeds from your purchase support our mission to educate individuals on the harms of pornography and sexual exploitation. Get your gear before it's gone. Shop the No Porn November sale now at ftnd.org/shop. That's ftnd.org/shop. Hey fighters, it's No Porn November, and if you're working to quit porn this month, you need to hear this. A new program called Relay will help you make this November a new chapter in your porn-free journey. Relay is similar to group therapy, but cheaper and easier. When you join Relay, you'll be matched into an accountability group with daily tools, giving you a stronger support system that is at your fingertips 24/7. Plus, during November only, get $50 off the Relay program with code FIGHT50 at checkout. Head to ftnd.org/relay and use the code FIGHT50 at checkout. That's ftnd.org/relay and get the full support you need to quit porn today. Fight the New Drug is an affiliate of Relay and may receive financial support from the purchases made using affiliate links. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Consider Before Consuming is brought to you by Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a non-religious and a non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects, using only science, facts, and personal accounts. Check out the episode notes for resources mentioned in this episode. If you find this podcast helpful, consider subscribing and leaving a review. Consider Before Consuming is made possible by listeners like you. If you'd like to support Consider Before Consuming, you can make a one-time or recurring donation of any amount at ftnd.org/support. That's ftnd.org/support. Thanks again for listening. We invite you to increase your self-awareness, Look both ways, check your blind spots, and consider before consuming.